He's a medical doctor. He's no conservative. None of us voted for him. So why does Dr. Anthony Fauci have such say over the future of our country? And what is the connection between Fauci and the population-controlling Bill Gates Foundation? A senator and a medical doctor from Minnesota says he's being ordered to lie about COVID-19 deaths. Why is that? And finally, Pope Francis says the whole pandemic is Mother Nature's revenge for climate change. All that and more tonight from the editor's desk. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Matt coming to you once again from the offices of the Remnant newspaper. Okay, so let's just cut to the chase. Let's see if we can have sort of an adult conversation about what's going on here. Because I think we're all pretty much coming to the conclusion that something is amiss in this country and that it's a lot more serious than a very serious virus. So I'm not here to try to minimize the virus, and I'd like to try to just get past that, because as soon as anyone starts speaking about this, you have the whole narrative. I have a brother whose uncle's sister's mother-in-law is, dying or is working on the front lines, and therefore the Remnant is asking questions, and this is not right. We don't understand the gravitas or the seriousness of this pandemic, but that's not true. We do. I've got a good friend who was just diagnosed this week with COVID-19, and he's recovering, and we're hoping and praying that he continues to do so. But it makes it very real when you have a friend, a good friend, or a family member who's suffering from this. And I know many of you out there are, especially those of you in New Jersey, New York. One of the young ladies who helps us out with research, her mother and father are in Manhattan right now in lockdown. Believe me, they understand. We understand. We're trying to get a larger picture in any case of what's happening here. I'm not an expert. I used to be an EMT, so I remember what an emergency room was like on a Friday night. It was pretty incredible, even here in Minneapolis, to see lots of people getting sick or dying even, and just on a regular weekend. But in the middle of a pandemic, yeah, it's something very different. But that's why those of us who are not at the front lines or in the heart of this or in the epicenter of this thing maybe have an obligation to look into the larger picture and to say, okay, we see that it's a problem, but what's going on? Why are the media right now attempting to sustain panic? Why are the politicians threatening to make this go on much longer than it obviously has to, well into the next year, beyond the next election, presidential election? Is there a connection to that? Why is the economy being tanked? There are difficult questions that need to be asked despite the suffering of many good people during this thing, this awful pandemic. They're even now, we're finding out even here in Minnesota, they're inflating the number of COVID-19 deaths. Why are they doing this?
Well, last Friday, I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19. Now, we've not done that. If someone has the pneumonia after and it's in the middle of a flu epidemic, and I don't have a test on influenza, I don't diagnose influenza on the death certificate. I will say this elderly patient died of pneumonia.
Why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID-19?
Well, fear is a great way to control people.
Now, this is not some bomb-throwing conspiracy theorist, right? This is a senator. This is a doctor asking some very probing questions. He knows something's going on here that's not right. We have an obligation to pursue this if we cherish our life and our country and the future for our children and all of that. Because in Minnesota, for example, it's gotten ridiculous. Minnesota so far has less than 50 deaths from this thing, thanks be to God. But our governor just came out yesterday and informed the state that we're going to continue on lockdown through May, that we are not going to peak until the middle of July, and that Minnesota could have as many as 38,000 deaths from this thing by mid-July. 38,000. That is half of the projected national death toll that we're getting from the experts in Washington, D.C. You see, why are they doing this? I don't know the answer, but I know that they're doing it. Did you know, if you contract this thing, if you get this disease, did you know that your chances of recovery are 98%? This is good news. This should encourage all of us to stay engaged in the fight to beat this thing, right? So why are we not being told that sort of thing on the news every night? Why is it just the constant ticker, death, 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 adding up the numbers? Like, again, we're not experts on this. We've never gone through this before. Those numbers look terrible until you compare them to other things that have happened, other epidemics, other pandemics, and you realize it's not that out of the range of what's normal during a terrible, a season, a flu season like this. So why aren't they telling us these things? 98% chance of recovery. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I think that even a Thomistic approach to this would be that as a Catholic, as a responsible person, we would have the right to take our chances. Now, I'm going to go to work. I'm 30 years old. I think I'm going to be okay. I got a 98% chance of recovery even if I do get this. And I have an obligation to feed my children to continue to work. This is not a reckless or irresponsible attitude. And yet, we're not even allowed to talk about that. Why is that? What is with the 24/7 fear-mongering that's going on? We're killing our economy. We're driving millions of Americans towards financial ruin, towards suicide. All the experts are talking about this. Suicide rates are going up, drug abuse, alcoholism, domestic abuse, domestic violence, right? Because a lot of blue-collar people are being affected. They feel like they're going to lose their homes. They don't have millions of dollars. They don't have a war chest that they can just rely on for months and months and months to get them through. They're looking at their little children. Am I going to be able to even feed them a couple of months from now? You see, these are the questions. We got to ask, why is this happening? 2 years ago, 80,000 Americans died of the influenza. 80,000. If you were in a hospital, you would have seen some overcrowding. You would have seen some exhausted doctors and nurses, right? But no one was talking about that then. They weren't shutting the country down then. They weren't shutting the economy down at that point for that one. Why not? Why did the victims of that particular influenza not deserve to have the same level of concern that we're showing 24/7 now over this particular one? It's almost like it's a celebrity virus or something. This is the important one, and nothing else matters. And now you have these insufferable globalist elitists like Bill Gates. He didn't even finish college. He tells us we need a nationwide shutdown for months, and then he says we may never go back to normal again.
What does opening up look like? Which activities like schools, have such benefit and can be done in a way that the risk of transmission is very low?
Yeah.
And which activities, like mass gatherings, may be, in a certain sense, more optional. And so until you're widely vaccinated, those may not come back at all.
Joe Biden's advisor comes out on national TV. He calls for 18 months of shutdown.
COVID-19 will be here for the next 18 months or more. We will not be able to return to normalcy until we find a vaccine or effective medications. Conferences, concerts, sporting events, religious services, dinner in a restaurant, none of that will resume until we find a vaccine.
Now, this is just sheer insanity. Reckless, irresponsible insanity. But he's not alone. Every day, Bill Gates' friend, the expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, he finds a way to passive-aggressively tell us all that we're never going to get back out of this. The normal is never going to come again unless he finds a vaccine that will save us. And that's going to take a while. Because remember, this is the same guy that never did find the vaccine for AIDS that he promised he would. You see, and now we're going to wait until he finds a vaccine for this novel coronavirus. It's not going to happen. So you're just left thinking, well, I guess this is it. Life's over. Never going to be the same again. The good guys are just trying to save our lives. But is that something you believe? You're ready to accept that Cuomo is just devastated by the thought of New Yorkers dying, that he has such a keen conscience for preserving life that he just has to shut everything down and tell off the president and worry about the ventilators this, not enough ventilators, nobody's doing enough, and this nasty fighting that's going on right now? Andrew Cuomo did not seem too worried about that when the dead New Yorkers were millions of preborn babies, remember?
New at 11, Governor Cuomo signing into law one of the nation's strongest protections for abortion rights.
Just after the Democratic-held Senate and Assembly passed the bill on this, the 46th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. The governor holding a signing ceremony earlier tonight in Albany.
No governor
no legislator, no political swing can ever jeopardize a woman's right to control her own body.
Hey, sweetie, it's your birthday today. You're 3 months old. Are you such a big girl? Are you having a good birthday? Yeah. Okay, come here.
And that's one of the things that's come out of this whole situation. Exactly how pro-life are we, you know? Abortion, yeah, it's terrible. You know what abortion is? Abortion's a real shame. But then when a bad flu comes along that might actually impact us, that might take some of our family members out, that might even threaten our lives, well, now we're all in with Andrew Cuomo. And there's no way that this guy, this good Catholic guy from New York, could possibly be conspiring to use this national emergency to take out the most pro-life president in the history of this country, Donald Trump. There's no way. We can't even talk about that.
There could be no greater contrast to the beautiful image of a mother holding her infant child than the chilling displays our nation saw in recent days. Lawmakers in New York cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth.
And the same can be said, you know, of the governor of Virginia, who cares so much about life, by the way, that he won't even let the Virginians go to church anymore, you know, for fear that they might catch the virus. But what about the million dead Virginians that were lost to abortion, including the ones that he said not very long ago could be born alive, and then mother and father and a nurse or a doctor could decide whether or not to kill a born alive child? Remember this?
There are, you know, when we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth.
Which brings us back to Dr. Fauci. Surely Dr. Fauci, you know, a darling of the Obama administration, you know, a guy who's been working with Bill Gates, you know, for a long time, working with the globalists, working with the population controllers and everybody else. Surely he only cares about saving lives. He doesn't have a leftist slant to his agenda at all, right?
The greater proportion of my professional career has been defined by HIV/AIDS. And if you go back then, during that period of time when there was extraordinary stigma, particularly against the gay community. And it was only when the world realized how the gay community responded to this outbreak with incredible courage and dignity and strength and activism that I think that really changed some of the stigma against the gay community.
And of course, as I said, Dr. Fauci partners with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation all the time. If you don't know anything about that foundation, please look it up. We'll put some links below here. You can check it out. I mean, this foundation is leading the charge to lower the world's population. Melinda Gates, who's a Catholic supposedly, you know, proudly talking about the new technologies they've developed over in Africa, where they can track and find out which young lady is not on contraception. They're going to provide contraception and sex education and lower those big nasty families, because that's not good for the planet.
A very big goal that you have stated: get 120 million women voluntary contraception by 2020. You're a Roman Catholic. You were raised Roman Catholic, and some have said it runs counter to that. How do you wrestle with that?
So I grew up Catholic. I went through K through 12 through Catholic school. I'm still a practicing Catholic, but over 90% of Catholic women in the United States use contraceptives because we believe in them. I use them. And if we believe in them and what they do for our lives, Shouldn't all women have access to those?
That's what they're all about. Look them up. They're partnering with the United Nations. They're partnering with the World Health Organization. Now they're partnering with the Vatican. So when Fauci now comes out day after day, says Trump can't open up the country for another, whatever, months, years, however long he thinks it's going to be, he's just parroting what his friend Bill Gates, the population controlling guru of the New World Order, what he's saying. The World Health Organization. What a joke this organization is. We're pumping millions of dollars into this organization. Look what they're doing. They are guilty of so many lies now and so many Chinese communist cover-ups that Donald Trump now has paused funding for the World Health Organization. And Senator Lindsey Graham, to his credit, is promising to cut off U.S. funding altogether from this organization.
Well, I'm going to take the burden off the president. In the next appropriations bill, there's not going to be any money for the WHO. I'm in charge of the appropriations subcommittee. I'm not going to support funding the WHO under its current leadership. They've been deceptive, they've been slow, and they've been Chinese apologists. I don't think they're a good investment under the current leadership for the United States.
Now, why would that be? Why was the World Health Organization so off? Why did they seem to be so in bed with the Chinese communists on this one? Why was there so much misinformation coming from this expert organization on world health? Surely the World Health Organization is only concerned with saving lives, right?
In most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them.
This is like something right out of some futuristic movie, some kind of weird James Bond villain stuff going on here. They're going to come in our house and take members of our family out, and we're not supposed to question the narrative here? We're just supposed to put the coffee filter on our face and get the purple gloves on, lock ourselves in the basement indefinitely without asking any questions because the virus might get us? Really? What happened to us? What are we doing here? This is about power. This is about control. It's about leveling the international playing field. Guess what has to get out of the way before that can happen? The United States of America. And Donald Trump. You know Donald Trump's little expression there, make America great again? You think that's just some sort of an innocent little campaign slogan? No, that's a threat to the New World Order. Because that means we're going to have borders. That means we're going to have a strong economy, strong currency on our own. We're not going to have total dependence on China and the rest of the international community. That's the problem. That's why they hate this guy. You cannot consider what's happening right now without the context of Russiagate and the whole effort to impeach this guy. They see him as a threat on many levels, not the least of which, by the way, is his willingness to stand with pro-life, pro-family, pro-God Americans.
It is my profound honor to be the first president in history to attend the March for Life.
You see? That's why he's a threat. So it's absolutely within the realm of possibility that people are using this very serious pandemic, this virus that comes out of Chinese, communist China, they're using it to take this guy out because the United States does present a threat to the New World Order. So what do we see now? We see President Trump. You know, he moves hospital ships, the USS Comfort or whatever. I mean, that was fun to watch. He goes down to Virginia, and it's very Churchillian. He sends it up the coast, you know, to New York, sails it into the harbor, where they're going to provide 1,000 beds now and medical personnel, medical staff. Beautiful gesture, right? People aren't going to forget that soon. So what does the New York Times do? They lampoon him for that. They mock him for that ship that went to New York. Why would you do that? He just provided 1,000 beds. He's going to beat the virus. Well, you see, they don't want to beat the virus. That's the point. They're using this thing, and they're using people who are suffering from this thing, and using people who are dying from this thing to push their agenda. And so Trump builds this huge, what is it, the Javits Center, what is the biggest hospital ever, built it like in 10 minutes. This guy is pretty funny to see how he's able to take their challenge, double, triple, quadruple down on them and make progress against this virus that's been unleashed on our country. He does all this in record time. He cranks out more masks than anyone ever thought possible in partnership with 3M right here in Minnesota. Great company, by the way, it really is. And my brother-in-law worked for them for years. It's a powerful company. He goes to car manufacturers to have them help with the ventilators because Cuomo is telling everybody that if everybody doesn't get a personal ventilator, it's going to be Donald Trump's fault, right? Well, he just cranks them out, as many as any state could possibly need, to the point now where some states like California are actually returning ventilators to other states who need them because they got so many ventilators, right? This is what Trump's doing. And then he starts talking about promising therapeutic cures like the hydroxychloroquine, which obviously is saving a lot of lives, preventing a lot of people from getting. And what do? They pitch a hissy fit. They can't stand the fact that this guy's coming up with actual solutions that are going to beat the virus, win the war, without the global community coming in to save the day. I don't pretend to be the guy that's got it all figured out, but it seems like it makes sense. It's common sense. It's pretty probable that what's going on here is that only the globalist international community is going to be allowed to save us. We can't have America, the great country, the powerful country with good industry, good medical. I'm from Minnesota. We got the Mayo Clinic here. I'm pretty sure that the medical people in this state are going to keep a lot of people alive without Bill Gates vaccinating everybody. Or Fauci telling us we got to go years into the future before we can find the right vaccine. So get ready for hell on earth between now and then. I'm pretty sure we got this. But see, that's not going to be allowed. That's not going to be allowed. That will not be tolerated. The crisis must be prolonged until Americans are positively begging the globalists to vaccinate us all. Here, shoot me in the arm, save me. Don't let this ever happen again. I don't care if the economy's crashed and trashed and destroyed. Save us, oh great globalists. That's what they're waiting for. That's why they're prolonging this whole thing. And by the way, once the capitalist American system, when it's strong economy, once that is crushed, if this goes on for months, once it's out of the way, the globalist man in Rome has to simply tell 2 billion Catholics that Pachamama wishes them to sign on to the New World Order. See, they even have a pope on their side. That's what they got. That's what this is all about. And I sometimes worry that Donald Trump maybe doesn't realize or hasn't thought through the influence of the Vatican in all of this, because these crazy globalist people, they don't really have a government that can enforce these things. They can try. The little blue helmeted United Nations guys, not strong enough. They need something stronger. They need a moral and a theological, spiritual authority on their side to force this stuff throughout the entire world. And that is Pope Francis, whether we like it or not. He's on their side. And it's not a conspiracy theory. He's admitted it. He's advertised it. He wants you to know that he's on their side. You see? The Pope's climate change encyclical, Laudato Si, provides the theological underpinning for the entire climate change agenda. You see, he's telling the world that God wants this, or Pachamama wants this, or whatever. And this is why Francis is hailed as God's own agent, who's going to bless and approve the Sustainable Development Goals, which we've been talking about so much.
The dramatic reality, this whole situation of exclusion and inequality, with its evident effects, has led me, in union with the entire Christian people and many others, to take stock of my grave responsibility in this regard and to speak out, together with all those who are seeking urgently needed and effective solutions. The adoption of the 2030 UN Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals is an important sign of hope.
Bill and I love data. The numbers matter to us. Between 1990 and today, 300 million women now have access to contraception. This year and every year, we, the Gates Foundation, will track data behind the Sustainable Development Goals.
Here again is Jeff Sachs speaking inside the Vatican during the Amazon Synod, promoting the Vatican and the United Nations promotion of the Sustainable Development Goals. Check them out.
Pope Francis has played a truly a unique role in recent times to help get the world to the Sustainable Development Goals.
These goals, of course, include universal education and granting access, working to give access to the entire world to contraception. That's the agenda. Overpopulation, climate change. That's what this is all about. Worldwide population control, the end of capitalism, and the dawning of a new green age of Aquarius. That's what these crazy people have in mind. And in order to help fly all of this stuff, they go to people like Bono, the insufferable pro-gay marriage, pro-abortion rock star from Ireland.
This year, Pope Francis called on humanity to change our own fate. Laudato Si was his rallying cry.
And again, friends, this is not conspiracy theorizing. Francis has called for a revolution. Francis has called, you'll remember, for a new humanism. And Francis's guy, Jeffrey Sachs, the head of the Earth Institute, advisor to Bernie Sanders, remember this guy? He went to the Vatican this year, just a few months ago, and told the world to stand against the United States of America, to stand against President Donald Trump, who he says is a threat to the entire world.
The U.S. is a problem. It became a far more significant problem with Donald Trump. He may or may not be president after November, but the U.S. became vastly more complicated for the world since 2017. The U.S. has blocked every multilateral initiative of recent years. It is the only country pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. It is the only country that pulled out of the JCPOA agreement with Iran. But this is an imperial power in decline. And it is a dangerous country right now. It will be absolutely dangerous if Trump wins re-election.
And you don't think that what we're going through right now might be part of that agenda, you know, to mess things up in our country so badly that Donald Trump doesn't get reelected? Because you know this is going to be hell on earth for him this summer. As far as his reelection chance, is going to be an interesting thing to watch. Every person that dies from this thing, they're going to blame him for not acting soon enough. You know that's coming. Donald Trump, the murderer. And if he does beat the thing, then they're going to say Donald Trump, the overreactor, who gave us a stimulus package that was way too expensive, too much money. He overreacted. He's not the guy that can lead our country. They will throw everything at this guy over what's happening right now in our country. That's why he can't just end it right now and say, well, okay, we're done. We beat it. He has to make sure he actually beats it so that they can't use it against him. That, too, is clearly what we're seeing. You know, it's okay, though, because if it does destroy our entire economic system, very strong economy, if it does destroy that, Pope Francis is waiting in the wings. Pope Francis has announced now a new globalist economy plan that he's going to be rolling out here really quick with the help of, you guessed it, Jeffrey Sachs and the United Nations.
Next year will be an amazing, amazing event to create a new world economy that is fair, prosperous, and environmentally sustainable. And the work that will be underway in Assisi will be world-changing and will be so exciting for all of the world and so productive for the coming generations. I will come for the economy of Francesco because we need a new economy, a new vision, and the teachings of Pope Francis in Laudato Si and in other teachings help to give us the pathway to a better world and a happier world and a sustainable world and an ethical world. So it's a thrill to be part of the change underway that is going to produce happiness throughout the world.
The Francis economy? This guy thinks he's capable of doing that? His churches are empty. The church is going broke. The scandals just keep coming. And now he's going to partner with the insufferable Jeff Sachs and the United Nations and give the world a new economy? And you think there's no conspiracy going on? Remember, this is the guy that the Pope, who went after Trump, said he's not Christian, went after him for building walls instead of bridges. You remember all this? He's been attacking America, attacking Trump for years. And he said there's no conspiracy, there's no connection to what's happening right now as our economy, every day that we continue with this shutdown, comes closer to the brink of no recovery. I'm sorry, friends, I can't go along with this idea that there's actually no attempt going on at the moment to destroy the U.S. economy. What else is this? You know, to destroy the U.S. economy and to set up a global economy, and dare I say, if they get their way, to set up an entire new world order. That's what they want. A borderless world, a world where all religions are equal. We've been working at it for 100 years, 200 years. This is the whole brotherhood of man, the Freemasonic order, the plan that's been in place for a long, long time, the plan that needed the Catholic Church, the social kingship of Christ, Christendom, to fall flat on its face, to be crushed and destroyed and beheaded before it could move forward.
Permette che ci siano tante religioni, ma Dio ha voluto permettere questo. Ha voluto permettere questa realtà. Ci sono tante religioni che alcuni nascono dalla cultura, ma sempre guardano il cielo, guardano Dio. Ma quello che Dio vuole è la fratellanza fra noi.
You see, this is the same thing. So as traditional Catholics, what we're seeing now is something that we were concerned was coming for a long time, ever since they threw Christ out, ever since they threw God out of public schools. You see, they've been working on this. You know, we're not just fighting a virus here, friends. They're using this pandemic, this emergency situation. Maybe it's just a test run, I don't know. But I think they're beginning to put into play now this whole process of a new economic system, a new order, a new political system, a new order. Now here's the thing, friends. It's Holy Week. So we all know that hope springs eternal. Christ was crucified on a cross. And from that ignominious gibbet, he forgives the world, right? And that cross becomes a symbol of hope for the next 2,000 years, something upon which God had been crucified, becomes the great symbol of hope. I'm not saying that this is all over and that there is no hope. There's tremendous amounts of hope. In fact, I keep going back to this. I think what's happening right now is more of a Tower of Babel scenario. They're beginning to break apart. This thing is not really working. Many people are seeing through what they're trying to do. They're desperate to get one of their own in the Vatican because they can't do it on their own. So if we fight for the restoration of the church, if we fight to have an actual Catholic Pope in Peter's chair in the years to come, all of this whole new world order house of cards can come tumbling down, but we need to open our eyes, say our prayers, become traditional Catholics, and have a Christocentric view of all this in order to fight this enemy. So I'm not saying it's over, but I'm saying they're vulnerable. America's waking up. I think Trump is onto them. So when he promises to defund the World Health Organization, that is the United Nations. When he pulls out of the Paris climate treaty, that's an affront to the globalists and to the New World Order. So for whatever reason, maybe because we're all saying our prayers and because he stood with the pro-life, pro-family folks in America, he seems to be getting insight to go after these demons and to not go along with them. I don't know why. And I'm not saying he's all the way there, but thank God for this man. Thank God Trump is in charge right now and not Biden or Obama or God help us, Hillary Clinton. You see, that's a nightmare scenario right there. And our globalist Pope, that's the other thing. I'll close on this. He's vulnerable, friends. He's not pulling this off. People are really, really seeing through him. We all rolled our eyes this Holy Week when Francis comes out and tells us that the COVID pandemic is one of nature's responses to climate change. God, help us! What is this man's problem? Really, Francis? In the middle of all this suffering and fear, you're still pushing your agenda, you and AOC and Bill Gates. You know, and this is clumsy. People see through this, friends, so don't be discouraged. Just know what we have to do. We need to get ready for war here. You know, we need to gear up. In a sense, the sort of clueless, blissful days of the past, pretending like everything was okay, those are gone now. We've had the chance to see what this looks like and what it feels like to be under house arrest and everything else. You think about this, whether it's the Soviet Union or the Cristeros or folks living under Nazi Germany, what kept them in place? Fear, fear of being killed, fear of being arrested, fear of the soldiers marching up and down the street, goose-stepping around Europe, right? Well, we're locking ourselves up right now out of fear. They gave us something to be very afraid of, and we agree to lock ourselves up, which means that if we get over the fear and we get over the panic and we say our prayers and we start asking questions, we can do damage to these people, to what they're trying to do, to their agenda, okay? We have 20 days now. Let's call it 20 days to slow the spread of the globalist police state in America, because I think we're all done with this now, right? We're going to practice the social distancing and do whatever we can to keep people safe and all of that, but this is ridiculous. This is the year 2020, and we're using methods to control a virus. You can't control a virus. You can't contain a virus. We're using this positively medieval, and none of it's even real. Oh, you can't leave your house, but you can go to the grocery store, the liquor store, the pet store. You could run over to McDonald's and have yourself a burger or whatever, and then go right straight home again and pretend like you're in quarantine. You're not. It's like a psychological game. It's a psyops, right? Stay in your house and you can live a little longer. So I think we should get busy. I think we need to call our governors, first of all, especially if you live in a Democrat state, got a Democrat governor. Get going now. Get the chain going. Start emailing people. Get on Facebook. Tell the governor, tell his office what you expect. That's the state is going to be opened up again on April 30th or shortly thereafter, because we're not going to put up with this much longer. We need to let him know. When Trump says we're going to start opening the country, we need to make sure that our states open up and let us go back to life, okay? Because what they want to do is prolong this thing, prolong this crisis, and this is pretty obvious, friends. All the numbers, thanks be to God, vis-a-vis the coronavirus, are going down. All the models were wrong, The death rate is at 1% still, or below that, This isn't going to be the Black Plague, and we know it, and they know it. And yet they're still trying to prolong this thing closer to the fall elections, perhaps, right? And then if the U.S. economy can be destroyed, and then America will be beat into submission and compliance with the New World Order. That's the thing. We got to make sure that we send a message loud and clear that we're on to them, and that we are not going to put up with this much longer. On the ecclesial front, the church front, write to your bishops tomorrow during Holy Week, because you don't got anything to do. You're not going to church, right? You can't go to Mass for the first time in 2,000 years. We're not allowed to go to Mass, celebrate the great feast of Easter, the resurrection of Christ, because of this thing. Well, we cannot put up with that. So we need to write to our bishops and demand that they open the churches not on the 30th of May, but today. Demand it. We can easily observe the social distancing guidelines in a big church. You can put a lot of people in there, and point out the illogic, if I can just for a brief tangent. We're not allowed to go. Let's use communion in the hand. Of course, we don't agree. We don't go along with communion in the hand for obvious reasons. But let's just use it for a second to show our open-mindedness. They're telling a priest, a young, 40-year-old, well-educated young man, priest, who knows a lot about dealing with people and everything else, responsible member of the community. He cannot give a consecrated host in the hand of his parishioners. He cannot carefully set the host into the hands of his parishioners. The question is, why not? Now, that's illegal. That's part of the shutdown, the lockdown. Can't do that. Lock the churches to prevent that. But I can go to McDonald's. I can go to the McDonald's drive-up window, and I can order a bag of burgers. You see how ridiculous this is? None of this makes any sense. But we can do that. We can go get that burger from McDonald's, but we can't go to communion. We can't go to church. This is against the First Amendment. It's a violation of the First Amendment. It's intolerance. It's religious intolerance. Clearly, there's no reason that the churches should be locked. So let's get on that bandwagon. Demand that the churches open tomorrow. Let's become traditional Catholics again. Let me just briefly tell you what I mean by that. I'm not saying go immediately to the Latin Mass and everything's going to be fine. Educate yourself on what it means to be a traditional Catholic. Educate yourself on how long it took them to destroy our liturgical patrimony, to destroy the venerable Roman rite of Christendom. It goes back to apostolic times. Why do they need to get rid of that? Why did they get rid of the altar? Why did they get rid of the Latin? Why did they do all those things that united billions of Catholics around the world in a common liturgy, in a common faith, common beliefs? Why did they do that? They had to do that because that was a powerful block of people. And if you're the Freemasons or the Globalists or whatever, and you're trying to dominate the world, you can't get past the Catholic Church. So try to understand what this is all about, how we got to this point. It didn't start with Francis. It goes a long way. The war against Christendom, the war against Catholic kings and queens, the war, finally, against doctrine and liturgy that we saw in more recent times, even when I was a kid. Go to our website, remnantnewspaper.com. Read our archives. Spend a couple days in there so you can begin to learn what happened, how we got here, why it's necessary to go to your priest and say, Father, we want to go back to what the Catholics did for 1,000, 15, 18, 1900 years. And finally, pray the rosary. Now that we see, again, what it looks like to be locked in our homes, what it looks like to have a regime that's telling us exactly what we can and can't do, now that we know what that feels like and looks like, now we can understand what Our Lady of Fatima was worried about. The errors of Russia, right? Atheism, dominate. Because what is atheism? What is atheism? Atheism is where hope goes to die. If our churches stay open, if we believe in God and the Blessed Mother, and we have our faith, we have hope. We're invincible. We're powerful. And the enemy knows that. So let's go back to praying the rosary, to listening to what Our Lady warned was coming. And pray that rosary also for our own perseverance, that we have the hope and the courage to fight, and also for the re-election of Donald Trump. Let's see if we can restore the covenant with God again in the time that this politician, he's not a politician, that this man, he's more of a statesman in the classic Greek sense than we've probably ever seen, because he does care about the country, he does care about the state. Let's see if we can get him re-elected and then maybe bring him closer to Christ now that he's seen the devil up close, these people who are trying to destroy him and destroy this country. I know there's a lot more than can be said. Again, please visit our website every day. We're going into all of this. We're trying to get to the truth. We want to stay united. The clans have got to stay united on this, and I think we're going to do this. We're going to come out on the other side of this stronger, more equipped, better informed about what the enemy looks like, what he's capable of, than ever before. I'm full of hope. I know you are. I want to wish everyone a beautiful Triduum and a glorious and a happy Easter, with the promise of spring and the promise of this whole nightmare ending, and all of us on the other side being stronger for it, better Catholics, better soldiers of Christ to go to war against those who are the greatest enemy to the social kingship of Christ, and who are the greatest, I think, threat to our way of life. Thank you very much for listening. Again, happy Easter. I'm Michael Matt for Remnant TV, and we'll see you next week.